And if you're familiar with my channel, you may be wondering, what does Balboa Park have to do with Old Hollywood? Well, hello and welcome back to another vintage-inspired video. History Seeking has brought us today to Balboa Park, located in San Diego, California. This is a place that has been here for about 157 years, since it was built in 1868. And we're here in search of filming locations to the Noir Darkness Descends. And now, if your first thought is, I haven't heard of that, let me help jog your memory.
You had said to meet you at 6 at the museum in front of the Egyptian exhibit. I arrived to find the doors closed, wondering if I had gotten the time wrong. I checked my watch. It read 6:15.
April Fools. Yes, that was me and that noir that I created right here in Balboa Park. And I thought it would make for a fun April Fool's Day video to take you around and show you some of the locations that I used in that. But if it helps, you can just think of this as a Balboa Park tour. And if you're familiar with my channel, you may be wondering, what does Balboa Park have to do with Old Hollywood? Well, over the years, many things have been filmed here, including films from the earliest days of Hollywood. However, not much of particular note, except for the classic film to end all classic films, Citizen Kane. In the newsreel footage where we're introduced to Kane, Balboa Park stood in as the palatial Xanadu estate. So in addition to showing you a few Darkness Descends locations, I'm also going to point out some of the buildings and statues used in Citizen Kane. So let's go.
The biggest boom to the park's development came from two World's Fairs. First, the Panama, California Exposition in 1915, intended to celebrate the opening of the Panama Canal and San Diego's role in it, and the California Pacific International Exposition of 1935. The majority of the buildings made were intended to be temporary, but we can thank Theodore Roosevelt, who touted the beauty of the buildings when he was here and stated that they should be left as permanent additions. This is the Museum of Us. The building and its bell tower were made again for the 1915 World's Fair. During World War II, it was used as a hospital, and today it holds around 2 million objects in its collection. And it's a spot I used for my short noir, and also one that Orson Welles used for Citizen Kane. It definitely looks different today. There are a lot more people around and no moody rain on the ground. I'm going to line up a couple of the shots from Citizen Kane. This is another spot used in Citizen Kane. It's a statue called El Cid, depicting an 11th century Spanish knight. It was dedicated in 1930, and there's actually 5 other statues just like it across the world, including in New York and Spain. As we make our way to the next spot, I just wanted to point out the Old Globe Theatre right here. It was added as part of the 1935 World's Fair and is modeled after Shakespeare's Old Globe Theatre in London. It looks different today in part to an arson fire that happened in 1978 that destroyed the original theatre. For the noir I used a couple of different hallways. I was sort of forced to use this one because when I came back to film A Different Night, the one I had first used was occupied. That one was kind of over in that direction, and we're going to go over there next. This is the Plaza de Panama. There's a good restaurant right over there if you ever find yourself here, called Panama 66. In modern times, there was a parking lot right here, but in recent years, they reverted it back to what it was like when it was first built in 1915. This is the Museum of Art. It opened in 1926, and it's a building that was used in Citizen Kane. This is the Botanical Building, and it is another one that was built, including the lily pond, for the 1915 exhibition, and it houses more than 2,100 permanent plants. In 2022, it closed for restoration, and it just reopened in the last few months. The lily pond was used for naval training during World War I and for rehabilitating soldiers staying in the converted hospitals here during World War II. And it's another spot used in Citizen Kane. Two spots, actually. This first one here shows a statue that's not here today, and I'm not sure if it was added by production or if it used to be here. And you know what? I haven't gone in here since they reopened, so let's go take a quick look. This was the first hallway that I used for the running scenes. I ran down this hallway so many times, people probably thought it was rather crazy because there was also a scream involved. My friend stood in as the other character in this, and that scene that I showed you earlier in the hallway, that was my husband. He stood in, not an actor, but he just needed to show his back, which I think he did an excellent job at. And right next to the spot I used was the second shot in this area from Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane is a film that even the least interested in old Hollywood have likely heard of. Released in 1941 and directed, produced, and starring Orson Welles, all at the age of 25. It's been #1 on many different film lists for the last many decades and is cited as the greatest film ever made. When it was released, it was a critical success, but failed to recoup its costs at the box office and faded from public consciousness, which we can place some of that blame at the feet of William Randolph Hearst, and I'll talk more about that a little later. It started to really get recognition in the late 1950s. Hollywood courted Welles after his success with his Mercury Theater. He turned down at least 3 scripts sent to him by Warner Brothers in 1936. And then in 1939, he accepted a contract with RKO to act in, direct, write, and produce 2 films. And Welles was given unprecedented artistic control, so long as RKO approved of the story and that the budget didn't exceed $500,000. Welles said the first day he ever walked onto a set was my first day as a director and learned whatever I knew in the projection room from Ford. That is, director John Ford. And Welles said he watched Ford's Stagecoach over 40 times as his education. While the film is very high contrast, black and white, the newsreel footage is flatter and was shot this way to have it look more like real newsreel footage. He led RKO into thinking the first footage shot for the film was only test footage, and the first of these fake test shots was the News on the March projection room scene, filmed in a real studio projection room on what is now the Paramount lot in Hollywood, but during the time of filming, it would have been the RKO lot. I'm glad that a noir meant we needed to shoot at night because there is no way I could have gotten any of these shots if it was during the day. As you can see, it is quite busy, but it's also spring break, so that could be a reason why.
At the time of filming my noir, I hadn't seen Citizen Kane, and I know you can judge me for that. So I didn't know about the buildings and the connections. But when I was doing research, I had thought this building over here was the same one that I had used. But going over there and looking at it, it's close, but it doesn't seem like it is that one. However, they did use this building right over here, and I used this courtyard and that hallway, so close enough.
This is the building that I first thought was used in Citizen Kane, but it's not. However, we will find the one that was used. Unless there was someone else in the scene with me, I was here filming this alone, so I imagine to those who were around and saw me just running and coming to a complete halt, turning around, running the other way, they must have thought I was crazy. In this scene, I went running down this hall, made a turn, and then was shown running down another hall. That's some movie magic because that turn right there just goes back to the Botanical Building. Right here is the area that I said was near the courtyard that was used in Citizen Kane. This is the Casa del Prado Theater. It's comprised of reconstructed buildings that were initially built, again, for the 1915 exhibition. It's used today for the San Diego Civic Youth Ballet and San Diego Junior Theater, and was another building used in Citizen Kane. We're back now to another Darkness Descends location. There is no way I could have gotten these shots during the day. When I was thinking of doing the Noir, this fountain first came to my mind, so I was very excited about doing this shot. This is the Natural History Museum, and it occupied many of the temporary buildings that were built for that 1915 exhibition, all of them proving to be inadequate for their needs. So in 1932, the Society of Natural History commissioned the same architect of the Museum of Art to create this new building. And during World War II, this building served as the infectious disease ward, and the elevators were added by the Navy and were made large enough to accommodate gurneys. You know that building I said that we're gonna find? We have found it. This is the one that was in Citizen Kane. You can tell very clearly by those circles that are on the outside. Charles Foster Kane was inspired by the powerful newspaper publisher William Randolph Hearst, and he did his best to get the film shelved. He sent out famed gossip columnist and Hearst employee Luella Parsons to threaten Hollywood with lawsuits and exposés in Hearst papers if Kane was not stopped. It went so far that studio chief at RKO, George Schaefer, was approached with an $805,000 offer from other studio heads to destroy all prints in the negative of Kane. In the end, some cuts were made to the film that clearly referenced Hertz, but the Radio City Music Hall premiere was canceled due to the theater's fears of negative publicity in Hearst papers. The film eventually premiered at the RKO Palace Theater in New York, but many smaller theaters were fearful of showing it, which aided in its underperformance at the box office. Hearst banned any advertising, reviewing, or even mentioning the film in his papers, which did not help its circulation. The next spot I'm going to show you, I was pretty proud of because there are no telephone booths in 2025, so a diaper changing room stood in for that. And I had to track down a vintage payphone, which wasn't easy. I think I found the only vintage payphone in all of San Diego. And as you can see, this is a diaper changing room, no telephones in there. And the night I came to film this, they were cleaning the bathrooms and they did not want me to use this, even though it would have only taken a second. So I had to come back another night. We reached the last spot on our tour. This is the Spreckles Organ Pavilion, the largest outdoor pipe organ with more than 5,000 pipes. Creator John D. Spreckles was one of the wealthiest residents of San Diego, and upon completion, gifted it to the city with the intention to provide free entertainment to the people. And to this day, they have weekly free performances. The likes of Albert Einstein have been up on that stage, William Howard Taft, Teddy Roosevelt, and Bill Clinton in modern times. I used this area for a sequence that took so long to film that the beginning of it is still daylight, and by the end of it, it is dark outside. I get to the end of this, I looked left, I looked right, I went right, and that was especially because there was a fantastic puddle that I thought would just look really good. And then off into the night I went.
All right, that does it for today's video. Thank you so much for coming along with me and walking classic film history here in Balboa Park. I know this one was a little bit cheeky, but I hope that you still enjoyed. And until that next video, I am wishing you a super swell day, and I'll see you then. Bye.
If you're still here and you'd like to check out Darkness Descends, I put a link to that in the description of this video, and I will also be adding a few photos that I shot alongside the video to my Patreon.